All right, everyone, disclaimer, of course, for political material. I should probably make one on every video from now on. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, and I'm also not a Trump superfan, but some people assume that because he's usually right on issues. That's not ideological, that's just me analyzing things from an unbiased perspective, without the Trump derangement syndrome lens, I suppose, which makes you seem biased to people with pink hair. We've got to look at Trump's tax returns, this situation. Does this not seem, let me ask this to people, the regression to Trump's taxes is a major issue, his tax returns. Doesn't it seem like an admission of failure by the Democrats, a la the Mueller probe and the Ukraine probe? Because that's really what it is. What happened is that early on in Trump's presidency, they realized that if they didn't do something to suppress him, he was going to succeed and win, at least in the minds of the right and the center right. He would definitely win re-election. He'd be seen as another Reagan. They don't want to go through that because they're afraid that he'll actually stick to his guns, especially in a second term, actually fight for another round of tax cuts, actually secure the border, begin fixing some of these long simmering problems since the 1970s or 80s in some cases, certainly the 90s, that nobody else has really made an attempt to fix. President after president has sworn that they want to balance the budget, stimulate growth, they want to secure the border, they want to fix the immigration system, but the only one that's actually taken concrete steps towards this is Donald Trump. The closest thing in number two you get is George W. rambling about an electronic wall at the border that now the Democrats have openly embraced as an alternative to a physical barrier. So they're afraid of Trump. Initially, they tried to stop him with the Mueller probe. They made the fake statement that Russia interfered in the U.S. election. Russia did not interfere in the 2016 election. There were a handful of Russian troll farms that bought some Facebook ads and made some memes on Tumblr and YouTube. That doesn't swing an election. Maybe if there's 10 people voting, that would have an impact. But the idea that they had any measurable impact anywhere in the country is clearly wrong. The thresholds, even in close states, are too great for that to have possibly made a difference, and so it's bullcrap. It's a fake claim. The Mueller probe essentially discloses that to the point where, to save face, Mueller and others have to say, but we couldn't rule out obstruction of justice based on mean tweets. Well, of course, that's not the job of the prosecutor. The job of the prosecutor is to find out positive evidence that there was obstruction and they couldn't find it. So Trump was exonerated. The Democrats, for several months, because they were wandering at that point in the wilderness, not knowing what the hell to do, they decided to drag it on. And eventually they realized there was a dim realization that the Mueller probe thing had not worked. It was beginning to backfire. It was beginning to grind down the popularity of down-ballot Democrats, and so they let it go, reluctantly. Then they defaulted to Ukraine. When this Ukraine foible fell into their lap, they were very, very happy, because after a while of having to pretend that there was a functioning legislature, all of a sudden they had something else to fixate on. The problem is that almost immediately Joe Biden got implicated, Trump got absolved of any real wrongdoing, and now you have an impeachment inquiry that's finally been officiated, thanks to the Republicans, ironically enough, that Pelosi I don't think really wanted, because I don't think she expects it to go anywhere. If they hold a symbolic impeachment vote, which is probably what they will be forced to do, and I am sure Trump is going to do everything he can to force their hand into an impeachment vote before the election, you watch, and I'll tell you why. She didn't want to vote, because they will vote to impeach. That may fail. That would be catastrophic. It would end Pelosi's career instantly. Or it may succeed and then die completely in the Senate. The problem is there are at least 2 Democratic senators that may vote against, like Manchin. If 2 or 3 Democratic senators side with the Republicans, and you end up with Mitt Romney, of all people, probably voting in favor because he's an asshole, what will end up happening is, because it is a completely partisan symbolic vote, Trump comes out smelling like a rose, a la Bill Clinton. He probably gains popularity. He runs on that platform and says, look, I have obstruction to deal with. Right now, these people can claim that they're obstructing for a good reason. We're trying to stop this evil orange tyrant. If they fail at impeachment, which they almost certainly will, or fail at removal, which is basically certain, then it's a big problem for them. So they're no longer banking on the Ukraine non-scandal to stop Trump's presidency, because there's no reason to believe that they're going to be able to remove him from office. Pelosi's initial desire was to hold it over his head through the election. The Republicans, on Trump's behalf, forced Pelosi's hand. They backed her into a corner. People saying, this time it's really over. This time Orange Man is done. Look at the state-to-state polling in the swing states right now as opposed to national polling in matchups. It's a much more rosy picture for Donald Trump. I think it was even didn't NPR come out with a story basically saying that the other day on the back of some of the New York Times polling. New York Times polling shows Trump beating the shit out of Warren and Sanders in most of the swing states and drawing almost even with Biden. Well, that's vastly different than it is on the national level. Nobody really cares at this point about Virginia getting more blue, or Kentucky, him losing a squeaker of a gubernatorial race, I believe, where the incumbent Republican governor was vastly unpopular. It doesn't really matter. If anything, Trump almost caused the Republicans to win, but of course they keep keeping him at an arm's length, and they need to stop doing that. The McConnellites, and especially the Romneyites, really need to just embrace the fact that Trump is the head of the party and knows more than they do about political strategy. Because he really does. And the proof is in the pudding. He's gotten the tax reform. He's gotten the wall funded. He's sat there and actually did the work that no other administration has been willing to do because they don't want to get into a mess. Trump doesn't care if his presidency is messy. So he's actually getting results. Anyway, now they've defaulted to tax returns. What's the problem with the optics of the Democrats rambling about Trump's tax returns? They already did that in the last election. They already tried to hold it over his head, and nobody cared. Nobody cares if Donald Trump 40 fucking years ago skeeved on his taxes, unless they're already so far left that there's no possibility of them supporting him. No Republican wants to look into his taxes. The center-right, by and large, wants to ignore the issue. People like myself who are more unbiased, I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm going, there are problems in the country. You could try to solve them, or you could build some sort of a platform, but there's no attempt to do that. When the Democrats even try to put forward a platform at this point, it just smashes them in the face anyway, a la Warren with Medicaid for all. Look how well that went over. When we're looking at her polling results right now, she's already down 5-6 points from her peak. Kitty, you can come over here and get petted if you want. She's already down 5 or 6 points. She's had a hard peak. She's probably going to keep falling because now, I mean, her signature legislation that she was expecting would bring great cheering crowds was a flop because she couldn't explain the math. She couldn't explain how it was fundamentally different from Bernie's plan that at least he has explained in more appropriate terms. What's the point? There's no reason to vote for her. The Democrats are scraping the bottom of the barrel. They have regressed to 2016/2015 era stuff because there's nothing new that they can run on. The Mueller probe is dead. The Ukraine probe is quickly losing public interest among every group that's not highly politically adept already. And among those that are like, hey, it's a non-issue, it just brings more mockery. It looks sort of like Warren and her meme army or something like that. It's a non-issue. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about Trump's taxes. I see few people actually discussing it who get hot under the collar, including people on the left. Some of these people are warning the Democratic Party openly, hey, you could try to put forth legislation that would benefit the American people. You could try to actually make the pitch to the American people that you're something more than the party of pink hairspray being subsidized and tampons for men. You could make that argument, but instead you'd rather talk about Trump's taxes, but they already did that for years. They found nothing. The fact is, Trump will go before SCOTUS. This will get dragged out probably beyond the election, and SCOTUS will likely shoot it down in his favor, and then at the end of the day, they'll just say, well, that evil Brett Kavanaugh is the reason for this. Brett Kavanaugh is the reason why Donald Trump's taxes didn't become public. Well, he doesn't have to make his taxes public. That's not a requirement for his job. If you're Donald Trump, withholding fiscal information has become a hallmark of your entire business career. Yeah, part of it is to fool investors, and it's worked very, very well. You pretend that you're more powerful than you are, Sun Tzu style, and you get investors in, and then you make it pay off in the end. They're happy, they got paid off. Trump walks away with a mountain of money. And each time then he can exaggerate, he can puff himself up a little bit more. This is his forte. It has consistently worked most of the time throughout his career. I don't care about his tax returns. Trump is rich. He's got billions of dollars in net worth. I don't care what the exact amount is. I don't care what the exact amount. We can't even determine what half his properties are fully worth. There's some disagreement. The net worth of Donald Trump ranges from the low hundreds of millions upwards of $10, $15 billion. How How am I supposed to know? Nobody knows. Even economists don't know. It's certainly not a crime to have succeeded in being been rich. There's literally no reason to believe that he's cheated on his taxes. People say, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. Okay, where's the smoke, though? The only thing that I have is the claim that he cheated on his taxes, but somebody alleging something without evidence is not smoke. So there's no reason for me to believe that there's fire. Meanwhile, the Dems have backed off Ukraine. When's the last time you saw a big story about the Ukraine inquiries going on? There's not a whole lot there. Trump is the only one that keeps bringing it up. He's baiting them. He's trying to keep it in the public eye. They're the ones that are trying at this point to stop talking about it, because I think that they realized at the end of the day there's nothing impeachable there, and they will get smacked in the cock really hard if they go forward with that, which Pelosi never envisioned. That's about all. Peace out.